It's time to tee off. My name is Bodo Sieber. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tagmarshal, and I'm very excited to have an expert guest with us today, Ash Weller, who is the lead tournament director of the PGA Euro Pro Tour. Welcome, Ash.
Thank you very much, Bodo. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and thanks for the introductory chat. So what we're going to talk about today is slow play on tour. It's not really what we're going to talk about, but obviously we need to grab people's attention a bit, and seeing that it's such a hot topic, we thought it's a good way to start. What we really want to talk about is pace of play management, flow management, field management with technology on tour. Does it work, and what are the opportunities? Let me introduce Ash. So Ash is not only the lead tournament director of the PGA Euro Pro Tour, but he's also a PGA fellow professional. That is your highest order, I believe, and has got a wealth of experience. You have been a rules official and expert for over 13 years. You were on the PGA rules panel. I believe you were as an official at the PGA Championship this year at Bethpage. What was that like, Ash?
It was extremely intimidating to start with. Refereeing the best players in the world, but once I got over the initial feeling of wanting to vomit immediately, I really enjoyed it. At the end of the day, they're all golfers at the end of the day, and as soon as you can get that in your head, it's all good.
They're only human, even though they drive the ball a mile, don't they? I mean, Rory is just incredible at the moment, isn't he?
Unreal, but Cameron Champ surprised me. Blew it about 60 yards past where we thought it was going to come down. He's ridiculous. He makes Rory look like a 20 handicapper when it comes to
this. That's incredible. So has the PGA Champs? I'm delighted to hear that rules officials also get the jitters. Has that been the biggest event you've officiated to date?
Yes, it's the first men's major I've done. I did the Ladies British Open at Turnberry. Three years back, I think it was 4 years back. But that's the first men's major I've done. So far and away the biggest one I've done so far.
Nice. And Ash, they say that a bad day on the golf course still beats a good day at the office. And I believe that you started your career in the banking world of London and then found your way onto the golf course. So give us a bit of your history.
I started off as a management trainee with a well-known bank in this country, and sort of drifted from that into the accountancy world. And I was doing my accountancy qualifications, playing golf on the side all the time. Got to a level, made the decision to give the PGA a go. And I guess it sums everything up. When I went in to hand in my resignation, my boss said, well, you might as well because you spend all your time on the golf course anyway. So I think the writing was on the wall anyway.
I may have said that to one or two of my staff before, but they say, no, we have to because we work in golf. We need to be out with the customers.
Yeah, I'll leave that one with you.
Nice. It's brilliant that you have been able to successfully make it into a distinguished career. And I believe that as part of the Euro Pro Tour, obviously there's some seasonality to be taken into account, but you also have a winter gig now, don't you?
Yes, I'm on day after tomorrow. I go to the Middle East, and I'm working with the MENA tour during the autumn, and then back again with them in the winter, early next year. So that's avoided the questions as to why the kids aren't getting Christmas presents anymore.
Okay. But will they see you at Christmas? That's the other question. Yes, they will.
Yes. I think I'd push it being away from home so much, but if I wasn't there at Christmas, I think I would be looking for a new career if there are any body parts left to put together to have a career with.
That's a fireable offence. I see. Okay, fantastic. Ash, thanks for the intro. We're excited to chat to you. What I would like to do is quickly also introduce Tagmarshal. So we are a business-to-business golf course and on-course optimization system. We launched into the market, that is a US market, in 2015, and we have since tracked more than 8 million rounds. We've collected over 1 billion data points, and there's now 200 courses that we work with. In this top row of partner courses, you see quite an esteemed list of private clubs. That's your Eastlake that recently hosted the Players Champs, which Tiger won last year. And Rory was the lucky one this time around. There's Valhalla, which Tiger won as well. He's probably won a major at all of these. Oakmont, Hazeltine, in the Ryder Cup hosts in a few years' time. And then some other big names. And then down here is your sort of major hosting elite daily fee / resorts. There's your Pebble Beach, Whistling Straits, also hosting Ryder Cup next year. US Open hosts Erin Hills. They were actually our first US customers, so we got very lucky, and they've become fantastic partners to us. There's Pinehurst, your Bandon Dunes, Carnoustie, that's going to be hosting the Dunhill in a few days' time. Kiowa, they're also in the news. I think we have left off Winged Foot, US Open hosts next year. Ballybunion, a fantastic facility in Ireland. But we are on many middle of the road courses as well, but most of those you've never heard of. So it's important for us to add value at the top end and also learn from these top operators, and then take that value and the learnings and the features that we can build on the back of that into the broad belly of the market. There's also a lot of tours and official associations that we look to add value to. And we're very excited that we've just worked with the European Tour at the Wentworth BMW Champs. And obviously the PGA Euro Pro Tour have played the entire season using our tournament track system. So there's a difference between what you do in the operational space, where we're working with courses and operators to optimize their field flow, to optimize efficiencies on a daily basis for a long partnership period, and what we do in the tour space, which is a bit more lightweight and obviously travels from venue to venue. So today we're talking about Tournament Track, which is our tour offering. And we're delighted to have Ash Weller with us. So Ash, before we get started on how you do it and what your setup is like, let me ask you a very burning question. Why is pace of play such a big topic on the tour and in golf in general?
That's a good one. I think it's been highlighted massively recently with our friend Mr. DeChambeau, who I think, to be fair, has been singled out a bit too much. But he's not quick. It's been highlighted massively, but there is a problem with pace of play generally. And if you got tournaments on live TV and the rounds are taking 5.5 to 6 hours, golf's not a massively dynamic sport at the best of times. But if you're just sitting there watching people stand around in fairways and someone taking 2 minutes to hit a 6-foot putt, people are turning off. And if you look at social media and what have you, there's a lot of talk. I turned it off. It was so boring, etc., etc. We had an incident with the Solheim Cup week before last, when the 4 balls were taking nearly 6 hours on the Saturday, and there was an awful lot of talk about it. I believe even at Wentworth last week, when the weather was good, one of the rounds didn't get finished because of daylight. And this is all negative publicity for the game, and it needs to be a little bit more dynamic when we're watching it. So it's a fairly sedentary sport compared to other sports that are up there. So sure. I think we've got a responsibility to make it flow better. And there's absolutely no reason even a tournament round of golf should take 5.5 hours. It just shouldn't happen.
Ash, I really like the responsibility factor that you're mentioning, because obviously in the US, there's 23 million golfers, and worldwide, probably as many, if not more. And they are watching the tours, and they are watching those best players. So there's a lot of responsibility on the players to pass on well, best practices, if you will, and culture, but then obviously also on the tours to set the playing field. Because it's one thing taking a certain amount of time to hit a ball if you can drive it like Rory does, but it's another thing if I'm watching this as an amateur and maybe as a beginner that I try and do the Deschambault pre-shot routine, but then it takes me 7 shots to get to the green. So I have another theory on why this blows up every weekend on social media, and there is a lot of research that has gone into the golf experience, and that's the amateur game I'm talking about. And pace of play always comes out, and flow of play and the time it takes to play always comes out very polar for players. If it's not done well, and obviously there's a lot of opinion and a lot of emotion, and also a lot of potentially negative management of it, which your classic, there's a marshal that eventually comes up to a group and says, hey guys, you're slow, get on with it. And the players then become very defensive. And it is a very confrontational space. So my theory, Ash, is that the people that the players, the weekend warriors that go and play and have these experiences, they relive that when they watch the tour, and when they watch a Deschambault type issue on the tour. And they relive all of these emotions that they've had out on the course when their own they blast us. Do you think there's some truth?
Yeah, if you take it, there's no real thing about air density in my view, but also there are big differences between your social 4-ball on a Saturday and a tournament round of golf. The courses are set up incredibly difficultly. The players are playing to an incredibly high standard, so there are more considerations into the shots they're hitting. But there's on both sides of the fence, there's definitely easy ways to speed up the game. You see it at both levels of the game. It's not just the thought process that's taking time. Players dawdle between shots. They're standing, leaning on their bag until it's their turn to play, and then they start assessing the shot, getting their yardage, and all that kind of stuff. And from at the your weekend warrior level, just getting between shots, being ready to play when it's their turn to play, moving quickly between shots, playing ready golf, that kind of thing. It's fairly simple education that you see just not happening on the golf course at both levels of the game. That's the frustrating bit, where there's obvious time-saving opportunities just not being taken. And again, your weekend warriors might be playing on a course where the course operator is ramming the tee times, thinking that they're making more money because they've got more groups on the course. But maybe those groups aren't going to come back because it's taken 5 hours to get round. And if the tee time intervals were a little bit greater, so that there was more flow to the game, then those players that do play will come back.
Yes, Ash, what you're mentioning here is exactly where we're adding value into the operational space, so we can ensure that there is a great outcome for even high capacity courses, and that they can guarantee the best possible experience, but also look at the commercial upside, which is getting more people through with a better time, freeing up their time so they can spend more time in their pro shop and food and beverage afterwards. So this is how the operational space uses our technology to get more efficiencies. But let's talk about how you, as a lead official and your tour team use the technology, how rules officials and refs are using the technology. So let me jump into just a bit of a schematic, because we've got obviously people on that that we need to give the lay of the land. So Ash, I know that you have done many competitions now. Do you feel comfortable in talking through this quickly? How are you setting things up with regards to technology, and maybe also talk about what your setup is like, because a tour comes in various different guises. Some tours have got 4 or 5 officials, some have got hundreds of volunteers, like the Open Championship might. So where do you guys fall in, and how does the technology implementation work, just in simple terms?
Okay, well, basically, our tournament staff, we have 7 tournament staff. There's 2 on logistics doing scoreboard scoring and what have you. There's a tournament secretary, myself as TD, tournament director, and 3 rules officials. So actually out on the golf course during a round of golf, there will be the 3 referees, plus myself. I'm a little bit more bouncing between the course and the office. So I've got, say, 3.5 referees on the golf course at any one time. We generally work with a field of 156 players, which is 52 3 balls. So we have 56 tags, 1 for each group. Tags are numbered according to their match number. So when we're looking at the screen, we see tag 25, that's match 25. We know which match that is. The referees all have a tag. They're set into marshal mode, if you like, so they show up as a buggy. And we get the initials of the rules official added to that tag number. So at any time I can see where my refs are on the golf course. Each official has a tablet so that they can see the map. That one you can see in the far right hand side there. They get a map of the whole course and they can see where every group on the course is. Either I'm in the field on the golf course with a tablet, or I can sit in the office with my PC with the map on, and you can see where the matches are, where the gaps are, and where the referees are. So I can use my resources much more efficiently than I could on previous years. Each tag has an SOS button on it, and if the group concerned is on the golf course, they can't immediately see a referee. They can press that SOS button, hold it down for a couple of seconds, and it pings via telephone signal, I believe. I'm not an expert on that, but it pings up. It shows up on the referees' tablets that match whatever needs assistance. We can see where that match is, and we know where the referees are, so we can send a referee accordingly. The great thing about that is that previously with, say, 3 referees on the golf course, it's very rare that you can see the whole golf course with 3 referees. So there'll be blind spots on the golf course. If a group gets into trouble, needs a referee, and they couldn't see one previously, the only way they could continue was either via, if they happened to be on a hole where we had a live scorer, which for us is generally every 3 holes, or they would have to play a second ball and then get a ruling afterwards. That takes time.
Sure.
Having that alert come up, sending a referee to it, because a referee can be 50, 100 yards away from a group and not be able to see them because of trees, they're around a corner or what have you. That alert comes up, the referee sent immediately, and that saves an enormous amount of time. If you just add it up, add the little gains we get by being able to get referees to rulings quickly, and also being able to sit in the office and see where the gaps are, or where a hold-up is. So reachable par 5, groups waiting in the fairway, then spraying it all over the place. You end up with 2 groups on the tee. You can see that very quickly and act on it quickly. So that's how we use it in the field. Each match has one of these tags in a little pouch attached to their bag. Starter hands it out, they hand it in at the end of the round, and that's how we work.
Brilliant. So you mentioned this, just to quickly summarize, the playing groups, one in a group gets a tag. The back office obviously has a full line of sight via any PC, or do you sometimes have a big screen at the event that you might show the field at? Is that something that you've done before?
We have done that a couple of times, yeah,
Okay.
which does show up nicely, and it's a mild form of showing the culprits,
Sure.
showing a little bit, which can only do good. But
yeah,
we have used that one a couple of times, yeah.
It helps awareness for sure. Okay, so the on-course team then have a tag so that you know their location, and they also have a tablet, like it's shown in the image here, that they have line of sight of everything that happens, and obviously they're hanging on to their radio, which is probably the tried and trusted tool that you've used for years. Let me jump ahead, Ash. our team has sent that to me. I don't know which course that is. Do you recognize the course?
Yeah, it's Newmacker.
Okay, so this is what you might see, and your team will see in the back end. You mentioned your officials, yes, IT, AW, so you know where everybody is. Those obviously make sense to you. Who's CD?
Charles Durney.
Okay, and then you've got your playing groups in line with their match numbers, like you've said.
Yeah.
Just talk us through.
That's a 2T start. So
Okay.
actually, the image of Nicola in the buggy is Newmacker. I'm just trying to work on the fly that is.
It would be, yeah. That would have been the event that you ran last week, I believe.
Yeah, that is Newmacker. Yes, it is Newmacker. Yeah. Okay, so we've gone with a 2T start where this image is taken. So the games going off the first will all be odd numbered tags. And then the games going off the 10th will be even numbered tags. So you can see in the flow that it's sort of match 21, then 23, then 25, etc.
So that's your first, and where's your 10th? Probably covered it. And then talk us through
match 35 is on the 10th fairway.
There you go. Talk us through the colors and how that helps you make sense of the field and the gaps.
Okay, basically a green tag is all is good. The ones we zero in on are the purple tags because they are delaying. So they are your culprits, and by the algorithm, it's telling us that match 19 is our biggest problem because that's the bigger circle, about halfway down on the right hand side, match 19. That big purple circle.
Yeah,
so
here we go. Okay.
That's it. That's them. So that's telling us that they are slow. They can see that they are. Looks like they're just leaving 16 green, going to 17T. The match ahead is on. Looks like they're already on 18T. So there's a whole gap there. You can see match. Yeah, you can see match 21 is in 16 fairway, which is a par 5. So you can see there's a bit of a log jam behind them. They're a good hole out, so that would be a match to send tag 53 AW, which is me, or 55 IT, which is Ian Taylor. They're close by, so they might well be sent over to have a look.
Okay, so and this obviously updates as the rounds progress and all the icons move along, as do the officials. So you've got almost like a radar view, like a flight control. And this is interestingly something that one of our operators said recently. He said, like, since I've had the system, it's the difference like flying on site and having radar, or like using a paper map and as far as you can see, and using Waze or Google Maps. Would you go as far in terms of describing what the benefits are to your team?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think they update every 10 seconds, something like that. You see the tags just move around.
Yeah.
I can also see if one of my refs is at the halfway house when he says that he's actually on the 3rd fairway, so that's always good.
That never happens, Ash.
But you can see there. So, for instance, let's have a think. If there's a problem on 18 fairway, so say match 15 or match 17 need a rule in, or even match 36, it look like they're sort of on 10 green. They can't actually physically be seen by any of the refs. We've got most of the course covered there, but that little corner is blocked. So if match 17 have got a problem on 17 green there in the pond or what have you, they're either going to have to play 2 balls or try and find a live scorer, and there isn't one. Live scorers have a radio, so they could come back to control and get us out there. Now they just ping their tag, and it's actually me there. I'm probably about a 30-second buggy ride away from them, even though I can't see them at all.
Okay.
And that's where we get the benefit. So match 17 could be there 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes trying to sort themselves out, or waiting to wait for a ref, or wondering what the hell to do. Whereas now they ping their tag. That would go through onto all the refs' tablets. We also set our scorer up, who sits in the office with a very powerful radio, because they've got to speak to all parts of the course. We've set we set them up with a login as well. So they would come on the radio, say tag 17, 17th green needs a ref. I say, yeah, I've got it, I'm closest, and I'm on my way, and the whole thing's done
Gotcha.
very quickly now. And that, even if it just saves a minute, 2 minutes, if that happens, and it can easily happen 10, 11, 12 times around, that's a big time saving overall.
There's a great question that's come in now, Ash, and that is, and maybe let me jump ahead here quickly. So one of the things that you guys do really well is to keep track of the interactions you have. So here's what that looks like in the system. We call that player assistance, and then you would make a comment, or there's a drop down of what you've done and where. So that might be a pace warning, that might be identifying that there was a ruling, or somebody searched for a ball and that's why they lost some time. So the question that came in is, if there's a pace question or a pace warning, would your refs use the tablet to show the players their position on the field and making them understand that they're impacting others behind them and how they're out of position?
You certainly could do. I'm not aware that we have. Generally speaking, on the golf course, you can either see the group ahead or you can't see the group ahead. In which case, they're in the distance and they know that they generally know anyway that they're slow, because either they've just playing badly or they've got a slow player in the group or what have you. You can generally say to them that the whole of the 18th hole is clear, as you can see. So let's close that gap. But there may well be an occasion where you could just show them the map. There's you, and there's the game in front, and there's all the games stacking up behind you. Yeah, that's a good point. That could easily be done.
So this is obviously what in the commercial space, what a player assistant would do, because the weekend warriors, they are not quite as pace aware generally. So if and it's often a case of, it's not us, it's the guys in front of us. So that's a usual response when there's a pace conversation. But in this case, having the tablet and being able to show the impact that a group has changes an opinion-based conversation to an information and data-based conversation, and then there's absolutely no confrontation, and it's very easy to diffuse a situation and make sure that people understand they're out of position and they need to try and get back in position. So that is how the general operations would work. On tour, obviously, it's a bit different because you guys are the law. And there's a question that is often being asked, and seeing that we are tracking groups, how does that now filter down to an individual player? And in your notes here, you've got pace warning issued on the 7th for this playing group of 3. How do you go from identifying a group that's falling out of position to putting them on the clock, and how do you identify if it's a single player in the group? His name may or not be Bryson. To that you get down to the nitty-gritty and actually the heart of an issue. That is a problem a question that comes up often, and I'd love to get your insight on that.
Okay, we can. We've got various tools at our disposal, which are on our hard cards and local rules and what have you. We generally speak to the group first, especially if they've had a ball search or a ruling or something like that, and you can say, okay, guys, obviously you've had a problem. You're whole out of position, you're half of, you're 5 minutes out of position or whatever. Just get a crack on next hole, start making some time up, and let's catch up that group in front. Generally speaking, that's good enough. It's always good practice just to have a chat to the game or games behind and just say, look, game in front of you had a bit of an issue. We've just given them a bit of a kick. They're going to start speeding up. Just make sure you keep up with them. 9 times out of 10, that's sufficient. But if that group loses more time, and it tends to be an issue, if they're decent pace players and they've just had a lost ball or a ruling or what have you, they will generally make that gap up. But if there's a slow player in there or 2 slow players in a group and they continue to lose time, we can either go to monitoring, which is we time the player or players in the group. And if things continue to get worse, then we can go to official timing. We generally time every player in the group, but there will be occasions, and there have been occasions this year, where it is clearly one player that is causing the problem through slow play, and we have the right to individually time a player. So if you've got two guys who are pretty quick, getting flustered that they're being put on the clock and they wander past you, they always drop back 30 yards from the slow player and just say, it's not me. Yes, we just say, we know it's not you, and I am only timing that particular player. That's unusual, but is done. And they're the tools we have. And then obviously, if they go over the allotted time allocation for a shot, then we get into the bad time scenario. And we have penalised a player a shot this year for getting 2 bad times in one round.
Okay, so that was a question that has come in. Has the system helped you identify and penalise players? But maybe it's a case of, if the system's being used effectively and you can catch groups out of position sooner rather than after they cause a real problem, it might be a way to actually do less penalties and still get the field through quicker. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If we identify a problem quicker, then it's easier to solve that problem. Quite often in the past, and this was the frustration, we'd be concentrating on a group who'd had an issue of some kind, chase them up, guys, come on, crack on, we need to catch up the game in front, especially on these courses where they're quite tree lined and you can only really see sort of one or two holes at a time. So you get this group and you're all pleased with yourself, right, I've got match 21, they were 8 minutes over when I found them, then they're now back in position, back on time, and then you turn around and match 23 is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah,
because they've lost a ball, or they just haven't responded to the increase in the pace of play in front of them. They're dawdling around, and that then concertinas through the field. If I'm concentrating on match 21, someone else is looking at the tablet and they can say, okay, match 23 have lost ground now, so they can be dealt with either simultaneously, or I can say to match 21, right, you know what you got to do, keep doing it, and then I drop back to 23 and say, guys, what's going on? You know, you're losing ground on the match in front. So seeing these issues sooner, the worst thing in the world is when you sat there and then the group's gone missing virtually, and you drive around and they're 2 holes behind, and that's the first thing you know about it, and then you've got a big problem because
now they're impacting everyone behind them at that point as well, obviously.
Correct.
Now, just to jump ahead, one of the things that Tagmarshal does is obviously gather data, not only for real-time management, but also to go and benchmark and look at overall data and analytics after the round and after the tournament and after the month and after the season. And that goes for the operators as well as the tours. But there is an individual, we call a track map. And here you've got a track map of 3 players. They had one sort of interaction with your officials that was logged, and that was a pace warning on the 5th. And you can see that here is your per hole performance, and they had a really bad second hole. We're assuming that they lost the ball here, or maybe there was a ball lost and a ruling, or whatever the case might be. And then obviously you guys wanted them to get back in position, and they did catch up. So you have got all of this information post-round, but you also have it in the round. So you would know somebody's out of position, but you can see how they've gone hole by hole. Have you found that helpful? And also, do you ever use that in conversation with the player post-round or ahead of the next day, just to make sure that they can be more aware and obviously stay within regulation?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. I think you can see, can you see the second hole there, Bodo? It's almost directly under the arrow on the pace warning issue notice on the map there.
Yeah.
If you just go, okay, so if you come to the right and down to that purple dot, I think you can see it even on the track there, that this just down a little bit to the next purple dot down. Okay, that's the second fairway. Come to the purple dot to your right on that fairway. That's it. I think you can even see there that the tag has gone onto the fairway and then it's disappeared into the trees behind the third green.
lost ball, that says lost ball to you, right?
Looks like they've had a ball search. Yeah, at least
Yes.
at least a ball search, and that's a big
Sure.
dog leg right, and a lot of balls were landing there. And I
Yes.
think the good thing here for us is that you can look at the pace per hole, but then you can see the big down arrow on the second hole. So if you catch up with them on the third hole because they're now out of position, it's always a difficult conversation. If you know, it always used to be, guys, have you had a problem? A bad referee will go, guys, you need to catch up because you don't know what the hell's happened. You need to find out what's happened to them. Is it, you know, they had a lost ball, you know, any particular problem? I could go up to them and say, guys, looks like you've had a problem on the second there. So there's obviously a gap. And they'll say, oh yeah, we had a lost ball. If you're going in with knowledge rather than just with a hammer beating them over the head saying like you're slow, they could have been doing, you know, it looks like, you know, they're doing generally pretty okay, and they've had one bad hole. If there's lots of, you know, consistent line of red underneath holes for previous 4 holes, you can see they're probably playing slowly, but that looks like one problem. So you tend to get to that group and say, guys, looks like you had a problem on the second. There's a gap. Do us a favour, just get a crack on next couple of holes and catch it up. And you'll just get it, sure, yeah, no problem from the players.
Nice.
If you're going a bit blind and without knowledge and you make an assumption as to what's happened rather than finding things out, you can make yourself look a bit silly sometimes. But you go into the players with knowledge, then that's a very good thing. And you can have a look on this group. I'll see which match number they are, but I don't know whether they've started on the 10th. You can gain an awful lot of knowledge as to what they've been up to during the round, and that's invaluable. As far as using it going forward from round to round, we wouldn't use stats too much, but certainly next year when we're revisiting these courses, if I look at the pace of play for the second hole, which is a reachable dogleg par 5, we may well have set our goal time a little too optimistically, bearing in mind that most groups were waiting to hit their second shots on the second. So we might adjust our pace of play schedule for that hole downwards a little bit, and then we could see a hole that's played, off the top of my head, I think the 6th hole played, the 6th hole, the par 3, played very quick through the week. So
Ash, let me jump ahead to the broader stats, and maybe then this makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
So here you've got stats for that would be a single day, I believe, but obviously you can run that for the duration of the tournament, and then you see the individual tee times. There's your 7:30 tee off, there's your 7:39, 7:49, and so on. Here you can see which groups have had interventions. If you hover over, you see the players' names. So, and then if you click on that, it takes you back to that or through to that track map for each group. And this is something that builds during the round. And at the end of the day, obviously, you've got a complete picture. You also know how many groups were in play, what's your goal time that was applied, and what's your average round time that was achieved, and how many interventions have you had during the day. So down here's the whole stats that you spoke to, and the 2 you mentioned was maybe a bit ambitious, whereas the 9th is actually playing really quickly.
So 6th as well. So they're both par 3, 6 and 9. You can also see hole 8 is playing above, and they are both reachable par 5s. So that shows you that par 5s can be a bit of a problem pace of play wise, because if they're reachable, you got guys 240 out waiting to go for the green, then spray it, and then we're playing tidy up with the group behind waiting. So that you could look at that and say either we need to just increase the pace, the time allowed on holes 2 and 8, and drop it on 6 and 9. But that's also telling you perhaps holes 2 and 8 we can make a call-up hole. So when the group gets to the green, call the group behind to play those shots at the green and then carry on putting, and that might smooth things out over the 18 holes. So that's the information you can say. You know, did the par 5s hold us up again this week? Well, clearly they have.
Yes, and there is just to to give some insight as to how the resorts and private clubs that we work with on a day-to-day basis would use this information. So they obviously give us a breakdown, much like you do, Ash, as to how you believe the hole should be played. And normally the par value gives a good indication, and that might be 12 minutes, 15, 16, but some holes are tough. And then we run data through that consistently and constantly. And then if there are holes that are underperforming, yes, we can tune the system to be more in line with realities, but also the course can now go and look at, are there any adjustment opportunities that we can run on this hole that are easy to do and low cost? And that might be cutting the rough a bit shorter, or it might be actually growing a little bit of rough next to a water hazard so less balls go in it, whatever the case might be. And then you can run more rounds through it and see if you've made any improvements. And you mentioned earlier those incremental improvements on 1 minute here, 2 minutes there, make a big difference at the end of the day. And then if you're a club that does 25,000 rounds a year and you've got incremental improvements on each of those rounds, that adds up very quickly. One of the things that we track, and Ash, obviously your team are superb here, that's the starter accuracy. So what this tracks is your start in line with the interval that you've laid out. And because you are measuring gap time as well. So if your interval is 10 minutes, you're trying to keep that consistent. And that is something that in the weekend warrior space is harder to do because you've got less disciplined players, but it's very important to get that right when it comes to pace management, because if your interval is say 9 or 10 minutes, but now you're sending off one group a bit early because one group a bit late because they didn't quite make it, and the next group is there early and you send them a bit early, you might now reduce that interval from 10 minutes to 6 minutes, and obviously that's going to cause an issue at the next par 3 at the very least. So keeping that gap accurate is something that your team does really well. And there's a question that has come through on this. Let me just find it. The question was, how do the players respond to it, and what's the take about the players? And that also brings me to the next part of our webinar. And you've been fantastically insightful, Ash. But we want to make sure that we're not guilty of slow play, so we need to get on with it a little bit and get back in position, as it were. So, what has the player reception been? There's innovation and improvement was mentioned. Is that something that the players appreciate? Are they accepting it? And you mentioned that initially they were really baffled that an official would appear out of nowhere and know exactly what's going on. So maybe talk about that a little bit, and generally, are the players pulling along with this program?
Yeah, the players certainly, when we first trialled this at our Tour Championships last year, it was a smaller field and a lot easier to hold a trial, and the players were extremely quizzical to start with. But then when you said, look, it's a GPS tracking system and we're going to know where you are and we'll be able to get to you quicker if there's a problem, they were, wow, that's fantastic. And the players have really got on board with it. Firstly, that we're doing something, that we're trying to do something about pace of play, where, and whether that system was going to work or not work, I go, okay, well, yeah, it's a good try. They'd never seen it before, didn't know what it was about. So I think we're at Tour with Dan Godding at the helm. We're certainly innovative. We're always trying new things, and this is certainly one of them. And the players are very happy that we're trying to do something about it rather than just talking about it, and that we're actually trying to reduce round times as opposed to just managing gaps. So having that information at hand and early is a good thing. They were very baffled when they called for a ruling and a ref suddenly appeared round the corner from when previously they were stood there waving their arms or trying to get hold of a scorer. That was accepted very, very well. They thought that was fantastic. They could just press a button and the ref would appear out of nowhere. They've certainly noticed that we've certainly had a lot of comment that they seem to think the general pace of play is improving, for sure. And I think the most telling thing this year was we did have an issue at our seventh event of the year portal when I think it was a telecommunications mast in the area went down. So the tags weren't getting any signal; they went offline, and it was 2 or 3 hours during an afternoon.
So you're flying blind. You're flying blind for the first time in the season, basically. Okay.
Yeah, but it was only the seventh event, and the number, because we went round the games and said, guys, you're going to have to ignore your tags for the time being. They've gone offline. We're sorting it out. And the number of players that came, and went, bloody hell, I was on the excuse my French, I was on the 15th, and we needed a ruling, and we couldn't find anyone, and this, that, and because the tags weren't working. Having a bit of a moan, and I said, we've only had them, about 4 months, and you're already missing them. And that was they bought into the concept of them very, very quickly, and they rely on them now. So that's good, and they're appreciative of the fact that we are identifying problems, slow play in general, a lot quicker than we were able to with fairly limited resources previously. So they've really got on board with it as far as I'm concerned.
And Ash, would you agree that that having the system has changed the way that you operate, and having the data has given you more information and a better sort of footing to have these engagements with the players and also with your own team in terms of, are we efficient? What can we do better? Yeah,
it's definitely it has changed the game slightly. Certainly the way I as a TD operate, I spend more time in front of the screen, sort of directing the troops, if you like, rather than sort of piling in and just trying to help because we're getting a bit overwhelmed or what have you. You can act from a position with more knowledge than we were in the past. We were tending to, certainly at some events, some courses are harder to officiate than others, but you certainly got the feeling sometimes that you're just chasing your tail. And you can, with this system, you can certainly sit and plan your strategy a bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Just a question on obviously using the system over time and thinking ahead to next season, where at that point you would revisit some courses. Do you see, and we spoke about it earlier, that there might be a way of better setting up a course in terms of how the systems tune into it, and it gives you more insight. So revisiting a course and sort of the long-term benefit, also collecting data on players over time. Is that something that you're expecting a benefit from into the future?
Yeah, certainly with the player data. Certainly at the end of the season, we'll be looking to get some reports from you guys and have a look. I had a brief look recently, and certainly when you look at the usual suspects, as we call them, they certainly were appearing towards the top, because the most amusing comment you always get is, I know I'm not the fastest player, but you always pair me with slow players, that's why I'm slow.
Yeah, sure.
And you can see pretty clearly that is not the case. Certainly going back to a course, I will look at the whole stats from the previous tournament and certainly see if we need to make a par 5 a call-up hole straight away, because you can see it caused a problem. That's then we're being proactive rather than reactive, and looking at general pace of play policy, where there's been problems and what have you. Actually looking at rounds times, it can be quite difficult, because day 2, we play 2 days, then we have a cup and a reduced field third day. So day 2 is always quicker than day 1.
Yes.
Historically, players who aren't going to make the cut just play that bit quicker. The players know the course better. If they've not had a practice round and played a silly shot, too dangerous a shot on day 1, they probably won't play it day 2, play it safe, that kind of stuff. And that, again, marginal gains throughout the day, but we always play quicker day 2. And weather conditions affect pace of play. course setup can be, or just course condition. It can be really wet one year and really dry and runny the following year. So to actually say that's improved pace of play is a very difficult thing to quantify. But certainly we can look at where things have gone well and use that to plan for the following year without doubt.
So the more weather context and setup context you have, the better information you have going into a new tournament. So one of the questions that I would like to ask, and we are driving a new innovation that we call variable goal times, where we're setting up courses goal times to be staggered throughout the day. So basically you're starting the day quicker, and then you've got sort of a staggered time that sometimes is 50 minutes quicker in the morning than it is in the afternoon, or sometimes courses have got a risk period between sort of the 9 a.m. and 11. So that's where you want your goal time to be more relaxed, and then the afternoon actually speeds up again. So obviously the more data we gather, the more we can understand the flow of a course, and then we're tuning the system in line with those realities, which then gives the course better management capabilities, and that is something that's extremely efficient. So one of the questions that I would like to ask you quickly, Ash, and you're saying that day two is quicker, would you also then adjust the goal time for day two downwards and just hold yourself to higher standards and make sure that you officiating more quickly, or do you generally keep day one and two the same, or is it something that would be worth exploring?
It might be worth exploring. What we do, we set a goal time, a total round time for where we think the golf course should be played, and we know that will be more of a struggle on day two than it would be on day one. Sorry, other way around. It'd be more of a struggle on day one than it will be on day two. But there is no reason why they shouldn't play at the same pace on both days. So we set ourselves a target that we know is going to be a challenge on day one.
Okay.
But is realistic and achievable for day two.
For day two.
That's how we tend to go. But yeah, it's a good point. You could, but there is no reason for that goal time to be different.
But we'll get our team to dig into the data a bit, and maybe we can have a conversation. That there might be some insight in there for you. Okay, Ash, a last set of questions, and we've got just a few minutes left. Does it work? Results, efficiencies, learnings. Is it a success for you guys? And there's one. You actually tweeted at the European Tour just a few days ago that you were at an event and your goal time is 4:26 and you're coming through at 4:26.08, and that's as accurate as it can be. So what is your feedback on the results, efficiencies, learnings? Does it work?
Basically speaking, yes, it does work. So as I said earlier, quantitatively, it's very, very difficult to say how much it's worked. We've improved round times by 5 minutes, 10 minutes this year because there's so many factors go into dictating how fast you're going to get a field round a golf course, and even the same golf course from day to day. Say last week, day one at Newmarket was drizzly, horrible, waterproofs were on and off all day. Day two was glorious, sunny and warm. And round times improved dramatically on day two. And even year to year, it's difficult to put an exact figure on it. But without doubt, we are getting to rulings faster. We are getting to problem groups faster. The players know they're being tracked, whether there's a psychological impact on that. So I think when they know there's a gap, they know we're coming, so they get on with it faster. We've got a lot more information to hand, and I think getting a 156 field round, a course that was playing fairly tricky in Studley Wood. That was the second day, I can tell you, but a field of 156, two-way, 2T start, getting an average round time of 4:26 and 8 seconds, I think is testament that we are doing the right thing.
Yeah. Very nice. So maybe just to bring that into the context of the day-to-day operator. So the first thing that generally happens is there's more awareness within the staff, and then they will be equipped with having that line of sight and having those preemptive abilities that you spoke about, so they can support players more quickly. Also, with our two-way system, that information goes straight to the players, and they can self-manage a bit better. So the first thing that generally happens is there's less bad days and there's less groups impacting others badly. So those, if you want to play to 420, then your 5-hour rounds just don't happen anymore. And on the back of that, then your 420 all of a sudden becomes 415, becomes 410, becomes 405, becomes 4 hours. So over time, and obviously that's where we're working with operators over 3-year periods and beyond, those incremental improvements all add up very quickly. And that is worth, and there was a question earlier on, what is the commercial benefit of this to the operations? Well, if you can save 20 minutes on average on your days, that is worth 2 tee times effectively. And if you can provide the best possible round of golf without delays, without backing into each other, so it's a better product that you're providing, and you can use additional capacity, and you're freeing up people's time that they can spend with you in your revenue generating outlets. So those are the very real commercial benefits. And to give an example, Erin Hills have, by optimizing their tee sheet with all those tools that Ash is describing, and the result has been $140,000 in additional green fees. And that is excluding any additional spend that people have at the resort through getting more legs through the door. Is there a commercial benefit to a tour? That was a question in terms of maybe it's a more efficient staffing, and maybe that's not the right approach at all. But you could probably do more with less labor hours, or you can get your people to be more efficient and have and fulfill more high value operational tasks rather than going to look for problems. Is that something that I don't know if the commercial value to a tour can be compared to an operator, but other than there being efficiencies, do you see value from your side? Or maybe I should ask Dan Godding that question.
He's maybe the best. All I can say on that, I guess, is that immediately commercially, to actually run the tournament, there wouldn't be an economic benefit. I would say that I can use my resources more efficiently because we're spending less time, or we can, if we're using our time better so that we are getting golfers round quicker. I think the only commercial thing that springs to my mind is that if we are a tour that is renowned for horrendous slow play, then we would have less members on that tour. If we are a tour that is renowned for being innovative, being very good with pace of play, and that events aren't taking 6.5 hours to complete if you're playing around, then that would encourage more members to join the tour, and that is essentially more income for the tour, fuller fields, etc., etc. So economically, that would be a byproduct of this.
Great, and you're certainly on your way to building that reputation. Well done. There were a lot of questions that have come through, and we are just about on time now. Are there any more questions? And thank you, Ash, for taking the time and for the great insight. It's been great. It's been fun. Are there any more questions that we haven't fielded? I think we pretty much can. Can people view the system, or is it solely for officials? So we mentioned earlier that there is a way of showing the system on the big screen at the event, and that big screen is literally just a website. So it would be possible for the Europe Pro Tour to actually show the live field on their website. That is something that might even be interesting also to have more reach into social media, and so that people can track the progress, maybe including scores of their favorite players. Um,
Yeah, certainly the leaderboard is always available on the website, and I am pretty sure that Matt Lynch, our head of media, he has tweeted the link to the live map before now. But it may well,
yes, you're right. He has, yeah.
Yeah, it may well be worth putting a link on the website for each event, so that you can go to it via the website. I could certainly have a word with him about that.
And what we could also do, Ash, is because you're obviously feeding your T-sheet straight into the Tagmarshal system, so that every single group out there has got the names attached. Then to just feed the scores as well, so that you would have a map view with the live scores, which you generate obviously, and their position, so that people can really keep track of the field even remotely if they're not on site, and if they're not field side, just keeping track of their players that they're rooting for. So that might be something that we should explore. It's very exciting. Are there any more questions, Duncan? I never managed to get you unmuted, or I haven't tried again since. Let me just give you the mic there for a minute. Do you have any more questions or comments, Duncan? Unmute. Okay, here you go. I should be able to hear you now. Just try and speak, Duncan. Are you still there?
Is a muted Duncan unusual?
Very much so. He's a media. He was a former editor of the Golf Digest, and he certainly tells a great story. So yes, it is very unusual to have Duncan on. But it seems to be a tech issue. Anyway, we've had quite a few people on, and then obviously now we're over time, so they've dropped off, and Duncan's our last man standing. Thanks everyone who's joined, and like always with the webinar, the people are busy and they would sign up. So we've had lots and lots of signups, and then they want to see the information in their own time, and that's really where most of the value then comes from sharing those insights. Ash, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you. Good luck for your second tour that you're running. Let us know if they need a system. You've got our number, and then we're looking forward to next year with you, and obviously going beyond that. And as always, we appreciate your insight and your critical thinking around how we can do things better.
No problem. Nice to speak to you about it.
Thank you, Ash. All the best.
Cheers. Bye now.